Hi, this is Jessica Kintner, and in this video, I'm going to explain variable scope in Python. I'm working again in Google Colab, which, if you haven't seen it before, is Google's version of Jupyter Notebook. Cool thing about this is that I can leave them hosted in the Jupyter Notebook, and then you can play with them interactively. So let's get started. So variable scope in Python. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I'll do a bunch of demos here, and I'll just show you. I think that's the best way. So demonstration or demonstrating variable scope. And I'll start with defining a variable here. I'm not actually, I should maybe define this as a main. Lots of people define the code as main, but I'm just leaving it here in this, at this level, and I'll still refer to it as the main part of the program. So var in main, this one I just want to be a number. I'll also define text var in main. This is a variable yeah, I can spell. This is a variable in main. Then I also want to define a function, and I'll just make it a really simple one. Define a function to show what happens to the variable scope when I get within the function. So let's define square is my favorite easy one of x. I need a colon to tell it it's a function. I hit return and it's tabbed in for the body of the function. This one I do want to, the same way I called that var in main, instead of x, let's call this var in func for variable in the function. And then I can do that square. I don't even have to define this, but it's nice to spell it out. Equals var in func squared. Then, just to show what happens, let's print within the function. Generally, I don't like to print in functions, but just to show this what happens, I can use it within the function var in func equals, all this still in quotes, so this is just text that I'll type out, equals, end the quote, and then comma, and then var in func. So that's within the function, and it should see it, and it should print it when it runs, and then, just in case, return square, which is what we'd expect. Oh, let's run that. So var, we could say square of not 3, since I made 3 of the other variable names, so I can tell the difference. Square of 4. Oh, and it prints out, I can use it within the function, var in func equals 4, exactly what we'd expect since that's what we passed to our function, and the square of it is 16. Now, however, what happens if I try to print var in func? It gives you an error message, and I was totally expecting that because once I'm outside of the function, it doesn't print. So once I'm outside of the functions, let me add a text cell. See if I can explain that. Error message is that var in func is not defined, and indeed it is not here in main. It's only defined in the function that I called square. So it's only defined in that function. So that's an example of a local variable. So local variables are only defined within the functions. So when I tried to print it here from main, it didn't know what it is, but as you saw back up here, when I had the print statement in the function, that's where this one came from, up here, print, and it's within my function definition. So that will work. That will print exactly as I expected it to, because I'm using it within the function where it is defined, and then it is not defined outside down here. So when I just tried to print it from the regular old command line, not within the function. So that's an example of a local variable. So var in func is only defined inside that function. And once I'm out of that function, I can't access that variable anymore. So that's an example of a local function. I can pass, we've talked about this before, so there's nothing new here. I specifically printed out square of 4, but I can still use these variables up here. So I can still pass it square of var in main. So it will know what to do with that. Whoops, I think I hit the wrong kind of return. And it's still printing out my statement because of course I have it there. I can use it within the function. Var in func is 3 because we defined it as the same thing as the variable we pass it, and var in main is 3. Then it gets squared and it is 9. So that's fine. Exactly what we expected. Print var in main. Exactly as we expected is a 3. It didn't change. We haven't done anything to change it. Then let's do, it turns out that I can use var in main inside the function. Let's make another function. Let's define this one as cube, and it will be obvious what I'm going to do with this one. Cube of x. And this time I'm going to use, I'm just going to use it just an example. I'm still going to return the cube of x, but for my print statements within, it turns out that I can use from cube. So just to indicate that I'm printing this from cube, var in main is comma var in main. So we'll print that out from in this function, and then it will return x cubed. There's my function defined, but I haven't called it. So I call cube of 2. Cube of 2 is 8, which is the last thing that happens, is that I return the actual value. And then from within the function, it does indeed print from cube var in main is 3. And also, again, I haven't done anything. So right up here, I just printed outside of the function var in main is 3. So it recognizes var in main both inside and outside the function. So var in main is an example of a global variable. So there's a text cell. Global variables. Whoops, I did that wrong. Just want bold, I don't want adding. Global variables can be defined in main, and then in the main part of the code, and then used in functions. However, there's another tricky bit here. If you change var in main inside the function, then you will not see it outside the function, but not see the change outside the function unless you do something else. So let's make another test. That's hard to explain. It's easier to just show. Yet another function. Define area of length and width. So I'd have to pass that 2 variables if I want to see an output. And then I'm going to use the same, but this time I'm going to do something to var in main. Var in main equals 6. It was 3, now let's call it 6. Var in main is 6. Print from cube var in main is now equal, and the quote var in main. So we'll change it and print it within the function, return length times width for the area of the function. It returns, that function is defined in one cell, and then I will say area of 3, 4, my favorite. I'm always doing 3 and 4. So from cube, so we printed from within cube. So from within the cube function, I'm sorry, area. Within the area function, oops, I did that wrong. That's why I said from cube. Sorry about that. From area, let's rerun that again. From the, oh, I have to also call it again. From area, var in main is now 6, and the length times the width, which I entered as 3 and 4, is indeed 12. 3 times 4 is 12. But if I now say var in main, or I could say print var in main, it gives me back the 3. The 3 was the original. I'm going to scroll way up to the top. The 3 was the original definition of var in main. So by changing it in the function, it did change in the function because I have this value of 6 printed out from within the function, but as soon as I got outside of the function, it did not show up. Maybe I should print this more clearly. Let's write print from main code var in main equals, just to make it match the other part, var in main, so that you can see a whole nice sentence when I run it to see what that 3 is. So that 3, so from the area function, the var in main is 6, but it did not change it outside. From the main code, we still see var in main is 3. I'm going to go back. So I had this other variable at the top, which I made on purpose to show this next part in the same, without having to create yet another function. I'm going to go back and edit that function. The last one I did, I'll edit area. So outside of the function, in the main part of the code here, I have another variable, text var in main, text variable in main. This is a variable in main. So I can use that one down here. Now I'm going to show you another trick. So before the return, before the end of the function, I will say global. So this is a keyword, global text var in main equals she changed me. And then when I print from area, global text var in main equals, and then text var in main. Run that. Oh, what did I do? It doesn't like something. Invalid syntax. Oh, right, sorry. It doesn't like that all in one step. Lots of things you can do all in one step, but it doesn't like that in one step. Sorry. So text var in main is a separate definition from, so I need a line first to tell it it's a global variable, and then in the separate line, text var in main equals the new definition of text var in main. There we go, that ran just fine. And then again, we run it again to see our area. So from, these are variables in the function being printed. From area var in main is now 6. From area global text var in main is she changed me. That's our new definition of text var in main. So now the test is, so we had print from main code, the var in main, which I did not define as a global variable. And now from the main code, text global, I'm going to put the word, because I used the word global in the code, text var in main equals, comma, text var in main. Let's run that. So from the main code, var in main is 3, the original variable, even though I changed it in a function. But from the main code, the text var in main, which I made a global variable, is the new one. She changed me. So global variables, if you use the Python keyword global in the function, so when I use the same variable name, text var in main, and I put this word global in front of it, that tells Python that the change I make to text var in main within the function should go outside of the function, which is what we saw here when I printed it from just the main part of the code. Then indeed I do get the change outside of the code. So using the Python keyword global, when I define, I don't really redefine it when I change the global variable in the function, tells Python to keep the change at the main program level, not just within the function. Well, let's see, I was trying to make a fancy font here. Oh yeah, I did it. Cool. All right, so that is a little bit about variable scope in functions and in the main part of the code in Python.